All right, I'm Rick Sinclair, and with me is, or me with him, is Curtis Jung.
Hello,
And
well,
this is webinar number 11, and we're going to be talking about shuttle route event macro, the random macro.
yeah, actually, it's not in the title, the random. I just realized that we will talk about some of the advanced features in the event structure. That is the shuttle event, the and macro, the or macro, and as Rick stated, we might as well cover also the random macro. Um, and I guess we should just get started.
Certainly.
Okay, so we will actually begin. So, first of all, what we need to do, and I always forget, we need to share my screen. Oops, wrong button. Been doing this for a year and I'm still hitting the wrong buttons. Okay, this is your central station. This is the mock up that we'll be using. The first thing that you'll want to do, if you haven't done so, and we mentioned this in prior webinars, is you want to take this step at a time. Click on your system button to get to your system settings, and you'll be looking at the CS3 panel. That's that icon there. You're used to seeing this window, and the triangles, we're going to hide that menu and look at our settings, or actually, we're going to go to the track items. And to do some of these advanced macros, you want to enable the events extended mode feature. And you'll see the dialog box. Just click OK. You can see that it's checked as a feature. So the first thing that I want to look at or discuss with is we are going to use the shuttle macro, and I've set up a simple shuttle track, probably a little bit more than we actually need for the demonstration, but just to kind of have it there. And we will click on the events button, and we're going to click on the add button here, and you can also add using the wrench icon where it says add event. We can actually do the add macro, so let's actually click add macro, see what that comes up to, and it displays your macro options. We're going to do the macro shuttle. Now, if I sort of recall, it looks a little complex, and I think in my previous viewing it was probably a little more complex than I had actually evaluated in my head. Let's close this back up. So you have this series of settings here, and these are containers. I'll say containers, or most of them do. And there's basically think of it as there's three pairs plus this one extra container. And what we will do is, what I'll show you is, you just need, first of all, you need the locomotive that you want to operate on your shuttle. And in this case, you can just kind of click it there and drags in there. And this may or may not happen. This is interesting. It already preloaded speed settings for that shuttle. I don't know if it had done that the first time when I ran it through. But that's basically, we're going to get through that point, because now we're going to discuss these four other containers. You have what we call the S88 start container, and then we have an end container, and then there's a middle container. And how we'll define that is that you have a shuttle, and let's see if there's a way where I can hide this where I'm not closing out the window. Here, I'll zoom out a little bit. On a shuttle track, obviously it's a point to point. So we're going to start at this K1 point, and there's our ending point, which is going to be K4 in this instance, because I have 2, 3. And these are contact tracks, by the way. You can also do this with circuit tracks or magnetic reed switches if you choose. So essentially what we're going to do is, this is going to be in my beginning section, and I'll just put that into the first container. And this is the end container. Now, this is not the middle container, so we're going to actually put this here. So if we do a save here at this point, the way that it works is that when a train, and it's kind of like best not to start this in the middle. Let's kind of close this out, get out of edit mode, and let's kind of display. Let's display the locomotive so you can kind of see what is going on with the locomotive. So what we'll do is um, we're starting it out with the train not actually at one endpoint or the other endpoint. And let's disregard the middle part because that will basically be added in a bit here. Um, these are just strictly locomotive control, so these signal lights won't actually do anything at this point. They're not part of the macro, just so that you're aware of that. So let's say we start the train over here in the upper left corner. The moment it will hit this contact, and let's actually give it some go mode, and it hits this contact, the macro itself will normally get the locomotive and switch it and set the speed to 12. Now, the downside of this demonstration is I'm not connected to any kind of tracks, so whether or not these are going to activate or not, it could be a setup issue on my end because I'm using, just kind of point out some things here. And this is a little bit random here. I have two Link S88s, and this indicator shows, the green indicator shows that the one that's connected is Link S88-2. And I was sort of, as I was setting this up, I had my doubts. So let's kind of look at the events. Well, sorry. Let me actually go into the edit article list, and I'll show you why that setting kind of becomes important. And if we go to the edit article list, and I'm going to select my contacts. Okay, so it is supposed to be Link S88-2 that I'm configuring. So quickly get out of that. When this goes yellow in my event scripts, let's look at the event script again. Close that out. It will basically at S1 change the direction of the locomotive on its own, and it will set the speed to 12, and then the locomotive will travel all the way to the other side until it reaches this contact point here, which is the ending point. And it will do the same. It will reverse the locomotive and then set the speed at speed 12. The settings that you're going to have for this, and let me get back into edit mode, is that basically you have your contact link. You have a delay. So the moment the train hits this contact point and gets activated, you can set a delay at the point where the train should reverse directions and take off in the other direction. So it's going to pause for 3 seconds once it makes contact here. So again, let me reiterate. The train's coming down here. Once it makes contact, it's going to slow down and stop. We will have this 3-second delay because you can change this number even to milliseconds or minutes if you want to. It will reverse directions and go at a speed marked as 12, which would basically be, probably right around here, right? The same thing applies when it reaches the other end. It's just going to reverse directions. Now, the setting for middle contact is basically, since this is sort of right-handed traffic on this demonstration, I'll put my contact place into here. And what this middle contact does is it will stop the train and it will wait for whatever duration delay you want and then proceed again at the speed that's listed in here. Now, this is kind of important because if you have a different speed between the settings and the return point, let's say my speed is at 53. Kind of huge, right? So it's traveling along here from left to right. It's traveling along. It's going at 53. It's going to wait at the depot. And when it's done, it's only going to proceed at speed 12 all the way to the end. Okay. And then it's going to reverse directions and travel at this speed that is set for it. So just kind of be mindful. The easiest thing to do is kind of have all your speeds at the same setting. because there is no secondary middle step here. Because now, if you think about it, let's say I had a contact here on the left hand, and I wanted the train to like slow down at a speed of 15 through the station. There's no other middle feature that is going to allow it to go back on at speed for the main line. So in other words, it's not going to go from 12 and then switch back to 24 to reach the other end. It's just going to go 24 from this left side, and from here on it's going to go 12 all the way to the rest of the line, and then when it reverses direction, whatever speed that whole thing is set for. So that's your primary straightforward shuttle. It will only operate one train. If you need to change trains, you can click on the locomotive icon or engines. And right now I only have one in the setup, but if you had a list, it will give you a list of all the locomotives that are in your locomotive list. And all you have to do is select that locomotive, and it will actually just automatically be controlled at these different speeds unless you change the speed settings. Now, the final thing that I want to talk about on this is this pause flag container. And what this does, and I thought it was actually a pretty cool feature, is that if you have an instance where the train is stopped and you don't want to proceed based on the timing of the middle step, for instance, sort of like a signal thing, you can actually set up a control point. And this one, the delay doesn't really matter here. Basically how it works is that if this is inactive, right, if it's gray, then the shuttle will proceed as it's programmed. But if this comes active like that, then what's going to happen is if the locomotive is going here and it hits that middle signal, it's just going to stop until this condition clears, and then the train will proceed. So again, it stops the shuttle from acting. So it would even do the same thing at the endpoint. So if you have a locomotive that travels to the end and you have maybe some crossing line that you don't want it to cross over, you can activate that and the shuttle will just hold at the station until the condition clears. That's basically it for the shuttle. I mean, it's really kind of a simple process once you set it up. One of those things that I do recommend you try. It's actually fun to have. It's more in line with the traditional shuttle that we had in the CS2. I believe also in the CS1. It's just a straightforward single train shuttle. If you are trying to do something that you sort of saw in other newsletters, where I have multi-shuttles or multi-train shuttles, you really can't use the shuttle macro, because there's just sort of going to be other factors in the track that you can control. One of them is, like I said, if you have a condition like this, or let me just kind of edit the trackboard page. So rather than having a single contact point like this, and you had something like this where it's required, let's get this signal out of the way, then how an advanced shuttle would work, and this is not the macro. Remember, the macro only has one contact in the middle. The way you'd want to have it, in a lot of cases, let's say your train's leaving the left station and it hits that first one and it hits the station contact, then you can do something like this train should only go at, half speed. And then when it reaches the second contact, then you want it to resume full speed or whatever speed the line is, right? So let's say it's leaving here at 50. You want to drop it down to 10 at K2. And then when it reaches K3, you want it to resume back at 50 because it's now back on the main line. You can't do that with the shuttle macro. Okay.
So you're saying you can't add contacts to the shuttle macro. You only get the free contacts, so to say.
Right. And just kind of to prove that point here. So it's a good way to put it. Let's kind of close this out. So I have these 3 placeholders, right? Or 4 placeholders, because remember the K3 on the end here is to stop the procedure, right?
Yeah, that's.
If I want to add a contact, I can't just, take the contact and drag it in. It doesn't go anywhere. It won't get placed. Okay. So, and you see how I took K2, it just replaced K2 rather than, it kind of jumbles things up. So you really can't add steps to it. So there's the limitation of, shuttle macros, but not everybody's going to have need for an advanced shuttle, but for a basic shuttle, this thing works great. One train, single line, no problems. Okay, so let's I'd say we take a pause here and see if there's any questions. And then before we go on to the next.
We just had one that says, when basically, does the event continue once you get to the other end? And I answered it saying it's yes, it's basically a loop.
Yeah, it's just a never-ending loop. It's just going to constantly go back and forth until you either have some problem with the layout or you decide to make it stop. The pause is really a nice feature. That's definitely new or more advanced than they had in the CS2. Definitely worth playing with. They did a good job on it. It looks daunting when you add a macro. So let's kind of did that weird. I think when you click on that plus button, it doesn't really give you. Oh, you can change it over to macro. So
you're not sharing your screen.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks. If you click on the plus button, so let's just kind of delete. If you click on the plus button, it doesn't right away give you any.
You're still not sharing your screen.
Am I not? Oh, I thought I did. Sorry.
That's strike 2, man.
Am I still? Is it still not showing?
No, now you are.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, if you click on the plus macro, you need to add the macro on this side, and there's your macro shuttle here on the right hand side. Okay, whereas opposed to doing it from the edit button and adding a macro, then you see your list is just slightly different, but you can have your macro there. Okay, we do have a question. How close to the end do you place the contact tracks? That's a good question. Frankly, the way I do it is you need to sort of consider the length of your locomotive and where that's. Well, actually, no, it's based on the wheels. If you use contact tracks, I use maybe a 172. I forget what the prefix is for track. 188 or 172 usually is enough to get it to slow down. You just kind of, obviously you want, once it makes contact with the track, the train's going to start to slow down. So just kind of make them long enough where, your trains are not hitting the bumper if you don't want that. Other than that, I'll just drive into the bumper until it actually stops.
It has to be within the braking delay of your locomotive.
Yes. So yeah, there's another factor, braking delay of the locomotive, the speed of the locomotive. Obviously it doesn't stop the way like we use like a braking module or an M84 where you're just killing power to the center slider. It's basically sort of, a acceleration braking delay setting. So 1 or 2 pieces of track generally works. You'd play with it. I mean, I have with multiple locomotives, they're all going to react differently. You can't be precise with it. You're not going to get a train to stop an inch from the bumper. It's just too hard to do with multiple trains if you're running different trains. But, you can tweak it. Yeah, and that's basically it. If you're using circuit switches, those are the ones that are triggered by the slider, the center ski. Then you have to make sure that trigger is far enough away from the wheel stop or the front end of the train to activate before the train reaches the end. And that should cover it. There's a little bit of play. You got to kind of mess with it once in a while. We do have a question. Is it necessary for the loco to reverse? No, the macro covers that for you. As long as you have the start and end point When you get it going in the macro, your train is just going to head off in one direction on its own at the speed that was set for. And you basically, if you start the train here, like in the corner, I'm still sharing my screen, right?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, you give it speed first, and it will reach one of the endpoints, and it will make its sort of coding decision in the reverse directions and whatnot. So yeah, I'm really sorry that I can't give you a live demonstration, but it's just sort of like the difficulties of trying to do this on the screen, um, based on what I have and not being attached to any kind of track. So the locomotives in the macro is already set to reverse itself, so you don't have to add any kind of reverse setting. To how to run the macro, yeah, we just kind of said that. Once you kind of have the macro set up to get it to start, you just have to kind of put the train somewhere on the track and then just run it. So like even if I started to run the train at like a high speed, once it hits the contact, it's just going to run at the speed settings that you set in the macro. So, okay.
Well, that was nice and short.
All right. Now, let's kind of cover and or macros. Wait, another question. Can you have another second train operating on this layout? Could it be always on the main line? You can do two shuttles, but the two shuttle lines have to be independent of each other if you're going to use the shuttle macro. In other words, you can't have like even this diagram that I have here. It's really not going to work with two trains because the way the shuttle is, you can't really control, or you don't have as much control to like the speed, the stopping, and all these other variables that are going to make your trains run in sync all the time. It's sort of like having, um, boy, I really can't explain this without.
Well, that's what that's when you would have to do every step individually
Yeah,
and not run a shuttle if you're running two trains on one shuttle line.
yeah, it's a syncing issue. You know, it's kind of like if your windshield wipers, if you had two windshield wipers and they ran at two different speeds, you know, every once in it crosses over and whatnot. Can you add switches to the macros? Again, you can't add any functions to the macros. Um, you know, it's kind of limited. I'm wondering, there is something that just kind of popped into my head. And though it's just sort of naturally the way the macros are set up. So again, let's look at these macros. These macros can only have one container in them. And okay, so what I was thinking doesn't really apply because what happens is these have to have a trigger point. And let me delete this. Let's see. So you can see it's a start, it's a container start. It works and operates off of a single contact point. I can't add two different contacts, so it can't evaluate two different things to be a start condition. And as I showed earlier, I can't actually add any other contacts or elements into this macro. It's sort of locked in. And this is the case for the shuttle. And, you know, sort of in relation to your question, I can show how we can add certain things to different macros, but the shuttle is kind of locked in. You're only going to have a single contact point that you can go with. Okay. So, do any of the wheels of the train activate the contact? Yes, for C track, or yeah, for three rail track, yes. Contact tracks are based on wheel contact. And as long as you're using the AC wheel sets, in other words, if you get a Trix passenger car or something like that, where it's a two rail train product, the wheels are insulated from each other and they will not activate the contact. But other than that, anything that's sort of Marklin related will operate, whether it's a rolling stock or if it's a loco.
Otherwise, you have to use a reed contact in two rail.
Yeah. And John, you know, yeah, as I'm getting to, I will discuss the and macro. the and macro. He says, can you add an and macro to the in the S88 container so two start conditions have to be met? I'm going to say no, but I'm willing to have you test it and dispute it, because it just doesn't make sense to really have two triggers going on there, especially if only one condition is met. Then you're basically going to have the train not stop, and it'll just keep running. So there's going to be technical issues to that, but it's sort of an untested answer. But I will say no, it probably won't work anyways. So, all right. So with that said, thanks for the segue, John. We can now actually go into the and or the or macros, because they're somewhat kind of similar. And to show you that, I am actually going to do. I'm going to change out track plans here. CS3. I'll do restore. And this will be webinar and or macro. And give it a chance to reboot. Dialogue does not need to be repeated here. Okay. Now this will be fun, because this is not actually going to have any track to it. So there's a little bit of theory that we're going to actually talk about. Now, you can see that I have different objects here. I have lights, I have turnouts, I have signals, and I have contact tracks. And again, because I kind of configured this, we need to be set to extended mode. Okay, so there are no events. And the and the or macros are probably going to be best used with, in conjunction to the if macro, the macro if here. Okay, so I'm just going to load one container with a macro if. Okay, and I'll actually have that being triggered by K1 here. So this can be track trigger. So essentially, when the train makes contact to K1, that's this one here, it's going to activate this if one macro. And you can see at the top, that's the listing of my macros. FS1, this is, okay, so let's kind of make it clear so you guys, hopefully it makes it, this is our trigger. Okay. The trigger basically is going to, and you can see the icon here under the play button, it's going to activate the if macro, and that's the if icon, and that's this container here. Now, normally, and when you're starting out using the if macro, I can close this out, you're going to have one kind of a container. That's the triggering container, or the evaluative container. Now, the one thing that I don't think I've ever said it this way before, I think of the if containers as more of a stable state container, but there are instances where you can actually use sort of momentary containers like the circuit track and magnetic reed switches. But for me, I get more value if I use like stable state stuff. That means that they're either going to be on or off, green or red, turned or straight. And you can see that, on all my examples here that I have, I can actually use this if container, and I can put it here. It can be a contact track. It can be a signal. It can be a turnout, or it can be, an auxiliary light, like a street lamp is what I have. Now, these containers in the if macro can only hold one item. See, I can't take my signal and make it say both. It has to be one or the other. Now, if you haven't watched the if macro webinar, you can do so, but let's not kind of go through a lot of explanation on how this works again. But basically, we have an evaluative container that's basically going to ask which state or which condition are these items. In other words, for instance, let's use the light. This is going to be an easy one to see. It's basically asking, is the light off? If I set it to a different position, then it's going to ask, is the light on? And if the light is on, then it's going to do this. It's going to operate, it's going to create this action. So let me do this. So if the light is on, let's switch the signal light to green. Okay. And right now we'll get back to the else container. So remember, K1 is my trigger. And actually let's kind of make this easier so you guys can evaluate and see what's going on. And so we try not to get confused. And hopefully this is going to work, because again, we're having trouble with getting things to activate when I want them to activate. So let me edit the article list. Let's actually change contact 2. Oops, it's under contact 1. Okay. These could be manually controlled too. Or I can say, remember K1 is now actually my trigger, right? So that's my trigger. So let's open up the event again so you can actually see what the if does. I can close this out.
Are you sure you're connected to the correct L88?
Yeah, I hope so. Well, I guess we'll find out. Plus, I can't be in stop mode. So, okay. So essentially, if I manually trigger the macro or trigger 1, if light L1 is on, then it will change S2 to green. So right now it shouldn't do anything. Okay, when turning it on or off, it shouldn't do anything. Now here's where we're going to see if I can actually get this function to work. Now the light 1 is on, and it should, if this works, switch S2 to green. And it does not. So yeah, that gets annoying. I'm wondering if it's because in the test setup I didn't actually wire up the grounding for the L88, so it doesn't want to evaluate anything.
You might be on the wrong L88.
It should be in manual mode.
Because it turned red.
It did turn what?
It turned red when you first changed the name to trigger. So I think you have the wrong L88.
Okay. So I can try changing that. Yeah, this has been sort of a boondoggle for me to figure out why it's not doing it. Oh. So let's switch this to L88 too. Yeah, let's see how that works. Let's switch them all to L88 too. Where are these? Sometimes this drives me nuts. Okay, there you go. There you go. L88 too. It's been one of those weird bugs that just started happening where I just can't get it to trigger and operate. Yeah, see, there you go. Yeah, L88T. So now you can see here that when I hit the trigger and my light is on, and I guess we'll show the event script again so you can see that for reference. If I hit the trigger, if L1 is yellow, it's going to change S2 to green. And ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. See, it switches it to green. So that's a simple, in programming, what we call an if-then statement. But because there's more advanced features to that, we have now an if-then-else statement. So what we're going to do is, let me edit the event. Oops, go into edit mode. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to actually drag the same signal here, and we're going to actually switch it to red.
Have it change the turnout.
Yeah, we'll do that in a second. That's definitely one way to do it. So what's going to happen is, if it starts red, nothing happens to S2. If the light is on, it's going to switch to green. Whoops. This is what happens when you program and you see this green dot up at the top. I'm still in edit mode. That deactivates all action on the events. And I don't know how many times I've run into that. See, it switches it to green, and it doesn't switch back to red until the light is off. So if we look at the event, here's how you read it. If the light is on, then it's going to switch to the green. Otherwise, it's going to switch it to red. And as Rick was kind of pointing out, we can actually do something else. I can actually add a different, or make the element different. So let's say I took the turnout and I made that. I can switch a turnout if it's not correct. So let's go green. Again, get out of edit mode. And close that. Oh, sorry, let's open up the event so you can see it. It helps me kind of keep track of what I'm doing. So basically, if the light is on, it will turn the signal to green, but if it's not on, it's going to turn the turnout to red. We don't often run into this particular setup, but you see it change it to green. If I turn the light on, it's not going to switch the turnout because it's only programmed to turn the signal to green. Back on again, you see how that works. And
Yeah,
nothing.
you would need another macro to change it to red in a different condition.
Yeah, that's not going to change it to red. So just kind of be mindful that it's very specific to do check for a condition. And then you have one of two outcomes that it can do when you use an if then else statement. Now, as John had kind of was wondering, how can you do, what do you use the and for? What do you use the or for? Well, frankly, again, these are containers and they're going to only hold one item. And we have two different states. We have sort of a conditional statement. In other words, what's the condition of this item? And then we have two results. So what I'm telling you now is, and then what you kind of understand when I say this, the and the or macros are basically used for having multiple evaluative items. In other words, you can check whether or not you can see if a light and a turnout or a light and a signal are certain states. You don't need to use the and macros for then and else. And I'll show you why, because it really sort of is not, it doesn't really make sense. So let me get to that here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add, let's get back into our events window. And I'm now going to add a macro. This time I'm going to make it an and macro. Okay, so if there are any questions, I can look at them now. Otherwise, I'll just kind of continue with the and macro.
So far, we're all watching, paying attention to what you're doing.
Okay. All right. So you see the process that I did was I clicked the plus button and I added a macro. To some degree, that's kind of a wasted step. The other way that you can do it is, if you were, you can just definitely add a macro by itself. So I'll add an or macro because it would act the same way. And so just kind of close that out and I'll show you what I mean. When I added the and macro, I used the plus button and it created, once I clicked the add button, it created FS2. And then I added the and macro. So now I've added two elements to it. When I used the edit button to add a macro, it just added the macro itself and it didn't add an FS3 state to it. So to some degree, this FS2 is useless for me. I don't really need it unless I want to sort of have different states before I use the and, but that doesn't really apply. And macros you're going to basically use independently. And I'll show you how that is. I'm just going to delete this so you can kind of keep track of that. Now, the and macro, basically what it does is when we open that up, it's a blank container. It just says macro on the left. There's no trigger. There's nothing that I need to trigger. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to add elements. I'm going to add elements like this. And you see there's a question mark here. That means it's an evaluative question here. So it's asking what's the condition of this. And the fun thing about the and is that you can add as many conditions as you want. Okay, I think 3 is enough. Now the trick here is that all of these have to be true. They have to be showing the setup as displayed on the and macro step. In other words, K2 needs to be showing occupancy. The signal at 2 needs to be green, and the turnout needs to be W2 in order for it to activate. So that this and macro is set. And how I'm going to do this now is let's go back to our initial if statement. Okay, so rather than having this one evaluation, this one condition of the signal, the light being on, I'm actually going to just delete it so it's empty. And I'm going to take my and macro and just drag the macro right into that container. Okay, so now my screen is getting a little cluttered here. Let's see if I can actually open up the and macro and have sort of a display of both. Nope. Yeah, I can't. Okay, so let's just kind of, we got to have a little bit of mental exercises. The and macro, again, K2 needs to be occupied. Actually, let's turn them all on so that we know what the activated state is. Okay, so K2 is on, S2 is green, W2 is going to be green. Back to the event, and let's look at, again, we were dealing with the if macro, and let's see if these are all true. Then let's actually turn the light on L1 to green. Okay. Okay, so basically if all these three elements are as they are set now, then the light will turn on. If none of them are on, it's going to turn the light off. Or one of them, all of these have to be activated. If one of these is even off, then nothing's going to happen here. And I will show you that. So get out of edit mode. And let's just turn one off for now. So let's turn my trigger off. Let's turn S2 to red. Okay, and again, all three of these have to be set. Once I hit trigger, and the light should not turn on. Right? See, that's how the on work. It's failing at the evaluation of all three products. Once I set that to green, then our light should go on. Okay, and now that these are still true, even if I hit the trigger again, it's not going to turn the light off. Okay, so let me turn one of these. Let's turn two of these off. Now the light should go off. So that's how the and macro works. Now, because we have an and macro, we can also use an or macro. And let's change our states. Let's actually add 3 different products. Okay. Now, how this works is, how an or macro works is that any one of these 3 items, any one of these 3 articles in the or macro that are true, in other words, right now, so let's say K3 is showing that it's unoccupied, but I want it to see if it's showing as occupied. S3, so this would be false. S3 would be true because they're both red. W1 would be true because they're both sort of red, okay, rather than turn or straight. So we will save that out and we'll go back into our if macro. And this time, rather than using the and, we're going to drag our or macro and replace the and. Okay, and so we're looking for the same result for L1, and that's the light. Same trigger, kind of turn that off. And you can see that we are kind of know that these both need to be red, and this one needs to be yellow, according to my or macro. And let's open up the state so you can kind of see that. Now I can close that out. Let's get out of edit mode. Clean up my screen so you guys can see what's going on. Close. All right, there you go. All right, so we have our trigger. We have 2 true states. That's S3 and W1. We'll allow the light L1 to turn on. Okay, turn it off. Turn that off. Or actually, no, I can leave it on. So basically, one of those is true. If any of those, let's see, if they all have to be false. So let's say if this is green and this is green, it should turn the light off. Whoops, clicking the wrong button. See, it turns the light off. So now all these 3 states, unoccupied, green as opposed to red, green as opposed to red, makes the OR statement false and it turns the light off. Any one of these can be true and it will activate the light. See how that works? And it's not going to shut it off because one of these elements matches the diagram in your event script. So let's kind of switch this out. You can kind of see it will still hold true. Let's make them all false again. Okay. Here's occupancy. Makes it true. Trigger it again, turns the light on. So as you can see, or what I'm trying to show you here, is that when you use, let's see, an if statement, which is where we are, you can use the and the or macros in the condition statement. So you can add as many conditions as you want. I mean, I could have made this, I could have added all these elements on the screen. So you can see why I really didn't need a track diagram, because just kind of show you how things will get triggered. And that's what you're going to use in an if macro. Okay. Now, the last thing that I want to show is why you don't need to use the if or the and or the or and the and macros for the action containers, the then or the else, because you simply need to, all you need to do in order to do multiple steps is you can just do this. So we're going to actually create just a random action macro. This is just your action. This is just a regular event script. Actions, okay? And I hate this typing thing. It's really kind of buggy. Event actions. This is the only way it saves it. So there you go. So what we'll do is, let me close that, and I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to actually add multiple events. You can do as many as you want. Your heart content. You can even actually think you can actually change a condition on your contact track. And just to make sure we see what it's doing, let's set them all to on or green. Okay. And so this is S3. So on the actual track plan, I want to actually turn K2 off, which it is. Let's turn L2 off, which it is. S2, let's turn that to red, which it is. And W1, turn that also to red. So I guess it would have helped if I put them all in the same row. So this is my event actions. Let's go back to the event if. Let's actually simplify our conditions. So let's take out the or macro. And let's base the condition on something I didn't use in the event step. Oh, I keep doing that. Let's use signal one. Whoops. Let's use signal one as my evaluation. Whoops, that's an action.
You're not. Oh, you are in edit mode.
Yeah. Okay. So we're using a signal as a condition, and yeah, it's just kind of maneuvering screens around. It gets frustrating sometimes when you're dealing with events. So now we're going to take our event action and we're going to drag that into the then container. So you can see what a nested macro looks like. It's just an icon for an event script. There won't be any else container because that's just sort of kind of programming that. Okay, so basically what it's going to ask the system is that if S1 is red, then it's going to go through and change all those different events that I had. So we will change it to green right now so you can see that it's not going to work. Close that out and get out of edit mode because that blocks all activation of events. So again, you're going to see a number of these things change their aspects. You won't see it now because the S1 is my condition and it's set to not work. So once I hit trigger, nothing's going to happen on screen. Okay. Now it's evaluation, and let's kind of look at the event if again, so you kind of have that reference. Close this out. Now that S1 is going to be switched to red, then it will trigger the event script action. And let's get the screen out of the way as best I can. And again, it's red. When I hit this, you're going to see probably 4 of these items switch aspects. You see how that works. So that is how you can add multiple events to your results, or the then or the else container. And then if you need multiple conditions in your if container, then you use the and the or macro. So that sort of concludes that portion of the presentation. So let's take another break if there are any questions. And after that, I can kind of show you. Yeah, I can probably show you the random on this feature too. So yeah, that's it. No questions? Cool. All right. So finally, let's actually go into our random functions. Let's clean this up a little bit so we don't have to see everything. Edit events. So let's close that out. We don't really need the or right now for this example, and we don't need the and for this example. So we're just going to start with our basic if statement here. And we'll use the same sort of let's see, if then else. You see it once you save it, it kind of dropped out a step. So actually, let's kind of start that over and add a new if. Okay, edit, add event, add macro. I'm gonna add a macro if. Okay, and I won't add anything yet. And we're also gonna add, geez, yeah, it really doesn't like it when I do that. Let's convert this one. Can I convert this? Let's add the macro and random right now. Okay. I don't need this. Okay, so the main thing is that you want an if container and you need a random container. Let's look at the if right now. Is this one being triggered by if1? Okay. So I'm going to basically put the container if here because I want this triggered by. Is it not showing the trigger? Okay. I think this got wiped out because I cleared out everything on it. So what I'm going to do is first of all, let's open up my trigger and make sure that S1 is my trigger. Or contact 1. Should be. Yeah, it looks like it is. This is where it comes in handy where you label stuff. Then you know which trigger you've added. And we'll go to the if macro and we'll evaluate. Let's look for... sorry, guys, I'm trying to roll windows around and it's still kind of kludgy. We're going to actually use an if container contact 2. So basically, if contact 2 is showing occupancy, then we can use one of these features. I can go ahead and I'll drag the random in here right now. And then we'll go into the random macro. I don't really need the else because we're just kind of looking at how it works. So we'll close this. I'll open up my random container. And just so you kind of see, I'm going to actually throw every element on this page here. It's 3. Sorry. And L2. Get the 2 lights in here. And let's just so you guys makes it a little clearer that you guys can see what's going on. I'm going to switch all the elements here to red. Because this can be anything that you want to do on the layout. I'm just kind of showing how you can do it. Doesn't need a track plan. Okay, so how random works, just to show you that, is once you hit the random macro, it's going to select any one of these items only, and that's all it's going to trigger is that one item. Okay. And I think also the K3 should be off. Okay, so my triggering or my setting state is going to be to red or off. So before I can show this to you, let's actually make sure everything here is activated or green. Okay, K2. Remember, K2 is my occupancy trigger. In other words, it's going to ask if K2 is being occupied, and everything else will shut off. And then my trigger is what we're using to manually activate this stuff. So get out of edit mode. I'm going to quickly explain this. Everything here is green. Contact 2 is not occupied. So clicking the trigger, nothing is going to change on the screen.
Now, I could be wrong, but did you put contact 3 in there, or did you put contact 2?
Contact 3 is actually okay. So good question. I can answer that. So contact 2 is used as my condition. In other words, I'm triggering the macro using contact 1.
Right, but in the random macro, is contact 3 in there, or is it
Yeah,
contact 2?
contact 3 I added as a macro, and I can show you that quickly here. So contact 3 will switch off.
Okay.
Okay. Because there's no question mark. That means it's actually going to switch that contact.
Yeah. I just
I just wanted to kind of like throw that out there so if people aren't kind of following. Okay, so right now, if I trigger this, nothing's going to happen. Okay. If I actually show occupancy on K2 or it's set, then any one of these is going to switch off or red. But only one is going to switch. You see how it was L2 that went off? So that's how the random is going to work. It's not going to go down a line or anything like that. So I can do this. You see another one switched off. If something else doesn't happen, it could have switched off a similar item. In other words, it tried to switch off W1 again or switch off L2 again. So let's see, S1 is now switching. So this is how the random works. You don't have a preset to it. Okay. I found this out when I was actually trying to do it on a staging yard. Rather than having a set rotation of trains leaving the station, I set it on random so I would have sort of be more surprised at what trains come out of my staging yard or my Schottenbahnhof. Okay, so that is the basics of the random. Now here's another trick here that I think you can actually apply. Let's just add another straightforward event. And not that it's going to trigger because I do have too many elements. Let's take all these things that went off to red. L2 and L3. And let's change them to green. I'm just kind of, part of this is just playing with it, guys. I mean, you can kind of say I'm experimenting while you're watching. Okay. All right. And it's going to switch all these things back to green. Mathematically wise and odds wise, this random is still it's going to be too large. So let's actually simplify it and get rid of, some of these that we don't need to waste our time on, which is, first of all, we don't need to waste our time on WL1 because it's already off. 2 is off. Hopefully this makes sense to you why I'm deleting these things. I'm just, rather than having a 1 out of 9 chance of getting this to activate, I'd rather have, a 50-50 chance of having this activate. So let's K3. Okay, we'll leave that on. Let's just get rid of everything else. All right. And this should hopefully make sense in the end. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, which is FS2. Take my random, and I'm actually going to put my other state as FS2. So now when the random macro goes, it's either going to switch K3 off or it's going to activate everything that I've activated in FS2. So just to show it, I'll show you on the screen what's going to happen. This is still my conditional. I have the 50-50 chance of either K3 going off or all these elements that are red or off going green. And let's see how it works. See it turn K3 off. Let's do it again. Everything switched on. So that's how you can add other states to the random. Richard asks, can the else state trigger another macro? Yes, you can definitely do that. Just be you just got to be mindful when you have multiple macros. You're dealing with sort of, when you have like large macros, you're dealing with multiple elements that can get confusing if you have too many what we call nested elements. And that's, when you're nesting an and macro inside another macro, we're putting in or macro, or you're putting in events like I just did in this recent one where I put the fs2 macro, this, into the single container of random. So sort of the rule of thumb is when you have certain macros, you have containers that are only going to hold one item. And that is sort of the evaluative states, like how we use the and the or and the if side of the macro. We use an and or here where the question marks are. And then your result macros or your action macros can be, other macros. I can take fs2 and actually put it in the F. I'm not in edit mode. I can actually take fs2 here and put it in the else container. And that will do sort of the same thing. It's going to turn it all out. Right now it's just one stat. And, it's just if I drop another one of these to be the opposite states, then you can kind of see them going back and forth. As a matter of fact, why not? Let's try it. So that was, let's see, that was S1, W1, L2, and L1. Let's see, I've already forgot. What is that, S2, did I say? Close. Yeah. Wait. I have a short memory, guys. So this is how it works. Okay, well, let's just take the ones that I know. Dang it. I hate moving windows around. All right, they need to be off. Yeah, let's do partial. That way I don't have to think too hard. Okay. And let's go back into the if macro. Let's drag fs3 here. Okay, and so my trigger, it's not going to change anything. Occupancy here should turn those lights off. Oh, I'm still in edit mode. I hate that when I do that. Trigger, I'm not going to change anything. Let's see about occupancy. There you go. So it's just kind of reverse. So yeah, you just gotta, when you do these things, just be mindful of which way you're setting things, what your logic is. S1 and W1 aren't changing because I didn't add that to the secondary event. You can kind of see FS2 has 4 elements, and I only put 2 in the FS3. But that's how you do multiple things.
Yeah, this is where if you build a manual for your layout, this would come in handy to list on a piece of paper what all your macros do.
Yeah, having a macro table is, or at least an event table is really kind of handy. I don't know if I have one. I wrote one up for somebody, but I don't know if I still have it available. Let's see. Let me check really quick, guys.
Was that George's stuff you just finished?
Yeah. So, all right, let me wait for the application to load up, and then I can kind of show you how that works. His is, I think his was a little bit more, wasn't as complex as some of the things that I've done, but nesting things is really kind of handy. You just kind of have to be aware of what you nested, which way you're switching things. Switching things back and forth can be, really tricky. All right. So let me kind of show you one example of a table. Let's see, share. Where was that swapping?
You gotta swap in the.
Yeah, I forget how to do that.
It's at the bottom of the screen for the window you're sharing.
Do share. Okay. All right, here's a table. Basically, the column on the far left is the name of the contact. Contact 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't worry about the letters. It was just for the person I wrote this for. You have your trigger. This is what gets activated. And then you basically list out the steps that each of these items does. So in other words, signal 11 is going to go red. Signal 8 is going to go green. These two columns on the right were sort of rewording that I did. You can see signal 5, I changed the numbers, signal 3 to green. When you have sort of an if macro, let's see, do I actually have an if macro listed in here? Maybe this is before you actually had the if macros. So essentially what I would do is, like, if I had if step 1 was a macro, I might have if like this. I'll just go ahead and edit this screen. So it would be like an if macro, and maybe if it was the first one, I'd have 1, and over here on the left hand column I'd have it saying if macro 1. My first column item would be the if column, whether it's going to be, let's say, a nested or nested and, right? I just have it clearly labeled, or I can just say, signal 1 needs to be red. And then I'd have my else column, my if column, if then and then container, that's the first action, and my else column. And then again, you can use, if you're going to use macros or another event. So in other words, I could say, okay, so I want GHK11A arrival. That would mean that the first action it takes, if S10 is true, then it's going to actually activate that event. So it's good to have these tables written out, partially because when you're running your trains and you're kind of watching the contacts, and even if you're watching the screens, you don't want to have to always be opening up your events to figure out what they're doing. This will give you your events at a glance, as long as you know which contacts are being triggered. And even in your CS3, and let's kind of go back to this CS3 screen. Let's see, share. So you can see here, the overview of your events isn't going to really tell you what the steps is. You'd have to basically open it up, right? You don't want to do that. It's just too much work for you to do, or it's too hard to view. So having a table like I showed you in the previous screen it's going to really help, miles, as far as, lack of a better descriptive on the top of my head. But yeah, just kind of do those kind of things. So that was, the and and the or macros can be nested. That's fine. They do have sort of places where they need to be. So that's done. Can I create a macro by just recording my actions, e.g. when I start running a specific code, and make changes to turnouts, lights, and specific actions? Okay, so I kind of always repeat this. Doing macros for engines and locomotive actions, they're good when they're manually triggered. They're not good when you're using track triggers, because the thing is, if you have, and I'll kind of see if I can actually show you guys an example on this shared screen. Let me load up another layout. Let's see if I have my webinar settings. Let's see. Let's use, I think I can use this one here. No, wait. Do I toss it? Let's see if this is it here. I'm just looking for a simple loop with different contacts in it. Go away. Okay, well, this will work. This will work fine. All right, so let me show you guys something. Let me just kind of place things on the screen so you see what I'm referring to. Edit the trackboard page. I'm going to put a contact here. All right. Yeah. If I program a locomotive to do something, All right, let's say I'm going to program locomotive 1. See, do I have any locomotives in here? No. Locomotive 1, and you know what? I'll use just similes so you guys don't get too caught up on what I'm displaying. Let's say B1 is my locomotive, right? If I program this to blow a whistle when it hits contact 1, in other words, it comes here and I get it to blow a whistle and I get it to slow down to 15 and I get it to sort of, turn its lights on and off. That's all great, right? But you got to remember, locomotive 1 is moving around the track. It's going this way, right? And unless you have only one locomotive, that works fine. But let's say locomotive 2 is coming down, B2, and it hits contact 1. Well, contact 1 is programmed to make locomotive 1 blow its whistle and change its lights and all that kind of stuff. But look where B1 is. It's not in your yard. So this is the one problem I have with people asking about, can I do programming for locomotives using track automation? You don't know where that locomotive is going to be. The system has no way of knowing which train hit contact 1 because you programmed it for train 1. But when train 2 hits it, it's a whole different ball game. You can't change B2. This thing was programmed to program B1. Okay, so track automated events for locomotives is going to be problematic. You can do it manually because you can see where the train is. You can control it by hand. Now, other than that, you can actually add event macros for locomotive events, and that's not a problem. You can nest events. The other side of that question is, should you use, when you're creating events, do you want to use the record button? You can. It's not recommended, and I will kind of show you why. So let me load up another system event, something with more locomotives, maybe. Let's see, what do I want to restore? I almost dread loading something up with a lot of locomotives. Sorry. Let's just load up a layout here. Turnout has 4 icons. Okay. There's a question here on YouTube, and I'll get to that in a second here. Let me just kind of go through this really quickly. Here's multiple locomotives. All right. Let's actually drag a locomotive. Okay, we'll use the duplex. Why not? All right. If I do something like this, let's create an event. We're going to add an event. I can close this because I don't really need it. I can't operate it when my CS3 is in stop mode, so we don't want it to be in stop mode. Just verify, make sure it's off. If I hit the record button, okay, I'm recording live. I'm going to set my speed up. Great, no problem. You see now I've got 2 speed steps here. I want to, activate the lights. See, I left the lights on. I got to turn them back on. Got to find this function here. Oh, I need a sound. Which sound do I need? No, that's not it. No, that's not it. Okay. Look at all these steps that it's adding because you're recording this live. Let's stop the recording. Now, I don't think they've changed this, but let me show you the inherent problem with doing it this way. Let's go back to the beginning. Look at all these steps. If I have something that I want to tweak, I have to verify with each one of these steps and figure out what that is. The other thing that we run into, sorry, let me get back to it. It's just unwieldy to do this sometimes. If I open up one of the step edits, it used to inherently add a delay for each step. That one didn't do it because when we added it in there, it was right away. You look at this. It inherently adds a 7.62 second delay before it's going to turn off the light, which then adds another 1.2 seconds of delay before it turns on the light. Each one of these steps now has an inherent timing delay that you're going to have to eliminate just to streamline your event. Otherwise, every time you run this event, you're going to sit there and wait for each action to take. And, it's if I turn this off, oops, yeah, that's FS3. That's this event here on the upper left corner. Let's look at what's going on here. Screen acreage, just so hard to maneuver. If you look at all these events, and I hit the play button, well, I'm waiting for all that timing action to occur. And I think I can open this up and hit the play button. And it's not delaying in
the start in the upper right, next to close.
Oh, yeah, we'll hit the start button. So, yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's just not going to go through that stuff. So, rather than kind of actually showing it, and I have this delay issue coming up here, so I can't really, it's probably because I'm not connected to the right S88, and that's preventing any kind of event sometimes to action. So what you really want to do, guys, is rather than using this record button, you know what? This is a waste of time here. Let's just delete it here. I'll create a new event. Where's my plus buttons all the way over here? It's just easier to, bad move. It doesn't work that way. When you want to add a locomotive, you drag it in from the bottom. That's your locomotive inventory. You have a single step. If I open that up, that just tells you what locomotive. And it has 0 delay. It's better to add delay than deleting delays. Now, remember when I was telling you can easily change locomotives? Look, all my locomotives are in this list. And if I want to change locomotives, you just kind of click there and it changes the locomotives. As far as events go, when you want to program thing or load stuff in there, you just drag the icon into it. Whoops, I think that works. Come on. Oh, sorry guys. That was a brain issue.
Nice going.
I changed locomotives and I was trying to edit it out. Okay, so now let's see. I should be able to either drag. I can drag whatever sound I want. I can test which sound I want first, and then, let's see. Sorry, one more thing. Let's get rid of this. Let's get up to our main functions. Turn these lights, drag these lights, switches to page 2, drag those lights here. And now when you look at these steps, there's no delay. I can add delays where I need them. Okay. So recording stuff live, unless you exactly know what you want to do and you're quick, it's better not to use the record button. Okay. All right, we do have one question. For example, a turnout has 4 icons, red, green, and 2 trains with an eye. What is the meaning of the 2 trains symbol? That's a good question. Let's kind of look at that here. That could be fishing for, let's see, not that one. Actually, let me get out of this. Let's go back to our simple layout here. There's too much clutter going on. Restore. Hopefully I can find out where we saw those icons, because I did see those icons.
Yeah, it's in one of the macros in the condition. When you're putting it in a script, you have a choice of what aspect.
Okay, let's go. Edit event. Add. Oops, did it the long way around. Oh, sorry. I loaded this script, but I forget every time I load it, my advanced editing shuts off. That's under the track setting again, extended modes. Okay, and now let's add a macro. Let's see, just choose one of the ends and ors. Is that right? You might have to help refresh my memory as I do this. Oh, no, that's not it.
It's when you add a turnout script.
I'm sorry, I coughed right through that. What did you say?
It's when you add a turnout.
Oh, add a turnout? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's try that then. Where am I going?
When you change the condition of a turnout.
Oh, okay. In the container. So I'm bounding around here because I'm trying to figure out where I need to be. A turnout. Oh, okay. So the question mark here, this one here. Sure, that's right. I think that was in the if.
Okay, now go to position.
Oh, position. Oh, yeah.
Nope, it's not showing.
Wrong element. Sorry. I gotta find the right element here. And it might actually be done in the it might be done in the macro is what he was referring to.
Yeah.
So let me add the right macro. Add macro. Let's see if it's an if macro first. Container if. See, is this it? Nope. Container. Let's see if that's on it. Nope. Where the hell was that? The container then. All right, let's see. Just kind of hunting around.
Yeah, there. It is.
There you go. That is a good question. As far as I know, it might actually be the equivalent of the two left ones. I never use that because it's basically saying, in my mind, the cryptograph is basically saying, is the track piece occupied by a locomotive?
Select it. See what happens.
All right. So, okay. So let's do that there.
There. See, it just changes the icon. Looks like.
All right. So let's go. Yeah, there's no icon on the track, so we can't really use it there. Let's try it this way. Let's change. Can I change it here? Yes, it doesn't really have the condition. So, yeah, you know what? I think you're right, Rick. It just changes this icon, which I don't know where that icon is displayed because it's not on a visual point, and it's an action. It's basically changing an icon because this is a result. It's not an action. It's not you're not evaluating whether or not a contact is occupied because it doesn't give us that setting here, right? So this is the condition.
Yeah. So it just looks like it changes the icon to me, just a pictogram.
Yeah. So sorry, Brom, I don't have a solid answer for you. It's kind of something that I've never explored, frankly, because I kind of at this point I've done everything I needed with the other two icons. We can look into that and see if there's anything in it. But it does have something. Some of these are just icons. They just change icons, and this icon I haven't seen anywhere where I can apply it to a layout. But it might be. Let's see if we can actually add. Let's get out of this. Let's see if there's any way to add an icon like that. Edit trackboard page.
We have a raised hand when you get a second.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I wonder if it'll be. Let's get out of this. Let's edit our article list. And let's look at our contacts. Let's see, that's link is 88.2. Nope. 88.1. Yeah, okay, let's see. So here you do have, it's funny how that limited range. So for a while they gave us more icons to choose from, right? Do you remember that?
It's in the other tabs.
Okay. Yeah, none of those seem to show the same icon. The train indicator. Maybe it's the train indicator.
I knew a train indicator.
Yeah, right there. But yeah, doesn't match what those other icons are. A bit of a mystery. Sorry, guys, I don't have an answer. Let's see. Does that raised hand maybe?
No, he put it back down. It must have been a mistake.
Okay. Okay. While if I can keep hunting around to see if there's any kind of an answer. But if there's any questions, let me see if I can set up an event so we can actually play with that a little bit more. Yeah, let's edit this.
You're on the wrong S88 again because you're delayed at the top.
Gotcha. Thank you. But I can still want to. Let's set up this trigger. K1 is my trigger. Actually, let's use. See, now I'm going back and forth. We don't need this. Oh, that was my F macro. That's what I wanted. Okay. A lot of reopening of windows. That's FS1. That's my first trigger. We're using the F macro. Close that. Open the F macro. If K3 is occupied, then let's. All right. Let's change the occupancy trigger to K2. That way it's a little clearer on what I'm doing. Nope. Dragged it into the wrong spot. K2, then K3. Let's change K3 to this icon. Sorry, I'm not verbalizing what I'm doing. I'm just kind of going through it. Edit article lists. Yes. Change change my contacts to link S882. Okay. So I can view all the S88s too. Go here. We're changing the icon for K3, aren't we? Switch contacts. We did this one, train indicator. Okay, and let's actually one more thing so we can see it switching back and forth. Let's go back to the if. K3 is there. Oh, sorry, edit mode. Just shifted my screen around. This time we'll put K3 if and we'll change. See, that even just changes the icon. So yeah, these two extra ones I have, can't say that it makes a whole lot of sense to me. All right, let's kind of activate it and let's see what's my if. If knows if K2 is on. Okay.
They're in different tabs in the S88 contacts. They're not a track contact; they're a switch contact.
All right, let me go back into there. So yeah, this switch contact.
See that icon's in the switch contact.
Yeah, that's the icon I just
contact. So
that's the icon I just used.
Yeah, but that I don't know why it's differentiated, but
yeah. Okay, so basically that's this K3 at the bottom is going to be the one that switches. Yeah. See, it's not programmed to change those icons because those icons aren't actually displayed. So that's weird. That's a good question. Don't really know why it's that way. All right.
We can go freestyle and answer some general questions, I guess.
Yes, that is all as far as the presentation goes. Questions are welcome. Any comments? All right, John, I'm not going to look at another website during our webinar, so look at it in the future. Anything? You guys have anything to ask?
Yeah, anyone, you can raise your hand and actually speak.
Have a couple. We got Norbert. Norbert, you are Norbert, you're welcome to unmute your microphone if you want to speak. Can't hear you yet.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi. This is Gary. Actually, it says my wife's name on there.
All right.
We do other Zoom.
How you doing, Heidi?
Yeah, good. I have my S88 does not show up on the system setting. How come?
Okay, so this is an S88 and you're using a CS3 Plus?
Yes.
Or is it an L88?
No, it's a S8. It's a S88 AC.
Okay, is this your first S88? It's the
Yes,
only one.
the only one I have.
Where do you have it plugged in at?
It's plugged into the bottom, right?
Yeah, it's in the box.
Okay. In the box?
No, it's plugged in underneath.
Okay.
Yeah, it's plugged in. It uses the
network cable.
network cable. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
And it's not showing up at all?
No, it's not showing up. But my contract tracks show up when the train runs over the contract. It changes to yellow and goes blank.
Okay.
Then it's working.
It's working.
But where is it you're trying to actually display, I guess, is a good question.
It's not showing up where you, when you scroll into system setting and you scroll down to the, on the left-hand side there where you have the CS3, the CS2,
Yeah.
the MS2s, it's not showing up.
Okay, so you can see my screen here, right? I'm showing
Yes.
my screen.
Down there, go down a little bit. That's not showing up where that link where it says your link S88.
Yeah.
I don't have that.
Yeah, an S88 doesn't really show up this way.
Ah, okay, good.
Yeah, it's one of the weird things that there is.
TFP3, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's usually going to be under the TFP3 because when you connect an S88 direct, it's going to actually be listed as a GFP3. Don't worry about the 1 or 2 because it's going to have multiple devices, and this is where you're going to set your bus setting. Oh, your bus length. Okay, so mine's set for 5. That means you have 5 S88 units because those are like your S88 modules.
Right, I did that. Yeah,
okay.
I checked that. Okay, I just wanted to know why it's not showing up over there.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Okay, yeah, I have a question. I had a short the other day. Train derailed, and it shorted out, and my whole CS3 went blank. And then I hit the button, and it restarted again. Is that a normal?
It's possible. How's that?
Okay. I mean, it rebooted, no problem, but it was just kind of scary there when the screen goes blank.
Yeah, I can't say there's anything normal when you short out your layout, especially if it causes something like that. But hopefully the protection circuits in the CS3 are taking effect and no damage has come to it. So sounds like it's okay. So
yeah, because I don't want to use the micro. I want to use a shuttle, but I want to do more to 3 stations.
Yeah, there's I have I have sort of a video with doing that with an LGB setup. Works great with HO. I haven't really discussed it because it really is sort of advanced functionality. Basically, what you're going to do is you need to evaluate or create creative conditions. In that instance, what I did was I referenced turnouts for where the train came from, so I knew where I could either return it to or I could change it and set it to go to empty tracks. So I won't get too far in depth with that because it is kind of advanced. So
okay,
all right,
thanks, Mike. Have a good day.
Yep, thank you. We did have another hand up. Looks like he lowered his hand. Who was that? Was that Carlos?
Norbert, accidentally.
Okay. So we lowered the hand. We do have questions. Have you ever had issues with events that have gone missing? I unplugged my CS3 from the power outlet and later plugged back in. When I brought up the CS3, it didn't have all the events I had added before.
Did you
Yeah,
back up?
that happens once in a while. Well, I can't say how often it happens, but
That's
usually
why
if I don't,
you do a backup.
yeah, do a backup, save the work that you've done, especially if it's working. And obviously don't overwrite a previous save, because once you overwrite one of those files, yeah, you're not going to retrieve it at a working state, is why we do extra backups. You can delete them afterward. You can delete old backups if you want, because, especially if things are working really great. Um, that's why when you see me loading up, I have various versions, because I'm sort of developing things in different states. So there is, let's see, an announcement about the update for the CS2, and also to allow updating the MS2. Can the MS2, the Mobile Station 2, be updated with the CS3?
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. No, I was looking at the next question because it was from the same gentleman. Yeah, you can update a Mobile Station 2 with a Central Station 3. Always initiate the update on the Central Station, not on the mobile station. But this latest update for the mobile station is only in a Central Station 2 at the moment, until the next update of the Central Station 3 is available, which we don't know when that will be. And we are assuming that they'll still put this mobile station update that's in the Central Station 2 in with the next Central Station 3 update. But we again, we don't know when that's going to happen. They don't give us information like that.
Yeah, I think part of the CS2 update was, I could be wrong, because it was kind of like quickly done. It was a short one. It didn't really sort of apply to the CS3. It seemed to me, I think, to some degree, being sort of better integration from this mobile station to with the advanced features that were sort of enabled with the CS3 software. Just kind of helped to streamline or be more efficient with the CS2 and the MS2 coordination. All right.
Heidi has his hand up again.
All right, Gary, go ahead.
Unmute. I did that CS2 update, plugged it into my CS3, and the whole track plan is completely scrambled. So I had to I'm redoing the track plan on the CS2
Okay.
from the CS3.
Yeah, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I know. It was not your fault, but it's just a matter of redoing it. I don't use it that much unless I use it on the when I'm doing my work at the table. So other than that, okay. But yeah, I did the mobile stations, but then the CS3 wanted to redo it back to the old settings. So,
Okay.
but anyway, we'll just wait. Thanks, guys.
You're
All
welcome.
right, you're welcome.
So the anonymous attendee.
I tried the update for my MS2 with my CS3 Plus.
Yeah, because your mobile station is already updated up to date as far as the Central Station 3 is concerned. In fact, I did try the update on my Central Station 2. I updated my mobile station, and then I went and plugged it into my Central Station 3, and it downgraded the mobile station back to the version that it thought was current. So I had to redo it on my Central Station 2 to get the current version.
Okay, so just kind of going back to a quick note, we do have this link that supposedly is on marklinusers.net, where they're actually talking a little bit about the icons that they're referring to, which was the same icons. I will post this link on the chat window if you guys want to look that up. Let's see if I can copy and paste it. Actually, John, why don't you just post that in the chat rather than, because I can't seem to get it to copy. Oh, wait. No, sorry, just did. Where'd it go? Now it disappeared again. What are you doing? Why are you making me nuts? John, if you get that link, go ahead and post it in the chat window. Everybody can access it there.
So again, the anonymous attendee says, seems info was set around saying that the MS2 could be updated with the Central Station 3. So that's not accurate. Yes, it is accurate. It's just the Central Station 3 doesn't have the current version of the mobile station software in it until there's the next update of the Central Station 3. So
okay, so we do have a couple questions on YouTube. Do you know if the MS update will improve loc pictograms?
no, there's still just the same icons in there. It's probably got to do with the low definition of the screen. They're probably not going to change.
Yeah, the definition on the screen, it is what LCD, so it's 2-color. I don't think it really changed too much of those icons. They're kind of generic icons, so we really don't have much play on the mobile station 2. There's an ask for topic. Are we considering doing a session on how to use contact tracks and braking modules together? We sort of covered that, but we can definitely go over that again and, on its own topic.
We covered it in our newsletters also.
Yeah, it's definitely covered in the newsletters. They're fun when I can actually show that, but we don't actually have a way to show it. But yeah, let's we will if you guys are interested, we'll definitely open that up. It was a lot of fun to do when we did that. Probably kind of changed the whole dynamic of our layout once we had a visual brake module going on. Yeah, thanks for the suggestion. I think our next month's topic is either going to be sort of review, but we don't really know what to review. We've answered all these questions, so it could be a topic for next month, guys. So just kind of keep an eye out for that. Anything else? I think Rick must be scratching his head. That's why his video went out. So any other questions? We'll take on any kind of questions you have. See if anybody's got their hand raised. Welcome back.
Thanks.
Now, I guess, we can actually maybe go over. Should I set something up? We can do a quick run through on the braking module here. Noel had his hand up.
Yeah, I don't know if we have a whole lot of time.
Oh yeah, we got 20 minutes about. So Noel, welcome. You can unmute your microphone, or if you want to turn your camera on.
Yeah, the question I had is first time I've ever joined, and is there a particular YouTube channel that your previously recorded videos are available on that I should refer to instead of asking questions that maybe you guys have already answered before, or sessions you've had? I'm an LGB user and have been for years, but just starting to look at DCC. So I found this interesting, but
yes, we are the channel, and I don't know, it's got its pluses or minuses. It's actually, the YouTube channel is called Marklin Trains.
okay.
And the thing is, unfortunately, when you do a search on Marklin Trains, it's going to pull up a number of different things. So I suggest you do a search for Marklin Trains and webinar. I think webinar will probably pull up our videos for you right away.
Yeah, you'll see the icon that looks like this with Curtis and myself in window or something like that. So
All right.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, for LGB users, I know we kind of do our sort of 3-rail centric, but it can apply to the 2-rail users. We just don't have, we don't really have direct experience or too much with the way that triggers can be activated. So usually for LGB, they're using magnetic reed switches. There's a little bit of adaptation when you actually want to trigger stuff, and I get your, you're starting out, so maybe you don't know what I'm referring to, but they
No,
are
I do.
covered in webinars.
Yeah, I know that the magnetic reed switches are
Yeah,
kind of the old way without, right? But
Yeah.
there's other ways to do it, obviously, now with DCS.
Yeah, I think if you're kind of skillful enough, I think if I were to do that, I would use any kind of occupation sensor, whatever they have, and usually those tend to be optical.
Okay.
So looks like Norbert posted a link. Is that a link for one of our webinars?
I actually found it on a YouTube channel, so I just subscribed to yours, but thanks for pointing that out.
Okay, great. All right. Thanks, Noel.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Lower hand. Is it possible to access the CVs for changing values for a loc with an ESU loc sound decoder 4? Rick, you want to answer that?
With what? What do you?
Can you access the CVs for an ESU?
Yeah, but with what? With a mobile station? With what?
Oh, what controller?
Yeah.
I guess that's the question that Rick needs to know. So
You can do it with the central station.
we can say, so yeah, the question's kind of vague because you can
Yeah, you
actually access your CVs if you're using an ESU programmer. So
Yeah, so as like I said, you can do it with the programmer. You can have whoever your dealer is program whatever CVs you want when they program the decoder.
Don Wheeler, I have an outdoor G-scale LGB. Is this practical for use with this system? It's a little subjective. You can definitely use it. The CS3s, obviously, they're not really, they're not sort of built like other LGB products where they can stay outside forever. But, I don't think you'd want to leave the controller out there.
No, I don't think there's any controller you leave outside.
Yeah.
Protected.
Yeah. Practical. Hard to say. I think you can definitely use sensors. It depends on how the sensors are going to be weatherproof. I know there's elements in LGB that are out there, but you can definitely program events. And, that's just kind of what we're showing in the first half of the webinar, that you can use those. And basically the automation of events. Yes, you can do that for sure. So.
For like a S88, if it's out in the weather, you would need to weatherproof it, put it in a structure.
Okay, Gary's got his hand up again. So, hello, Gary.
Okay, there we go. You said you had a shuttle system for a rail car. Did you use the magnetic one or did you use the contact track?
I have actually done both. Because I'm in sort of the 3-rail world, the contact tracks actually work better. The problem that I had using contact tracks in 2-rail world is that whenever I stopped power to the layout, it would literally turn my contacts off. And then when I reapplied power to the layout, it turned contacts back on. And the issue was that I activate all my events using sort of either an on trigger or an off trigger. And when you power down your layout and you turn the layout back on and it turns on like 4 sensors, then I have events that are being triggered that are not supposed to be triggered that way. So in the show that I did for the LGB layout, I initially did contact tracks because, I found out you can activate contacts, which was really cool. But then I realized what the problem was, and I converted everything to using magnetic switches. And so, yes, you can do it either way. I think the one issue.
I have,
Go ahead.
I have a 3-rail. I'm not LGB. I have a 3-rail, and I just want to run shuttle trains. So is it better with the contact track or the magnetic?
In that sense, I would definitely recommend contact tracks.
Okay.
And let me so I'll let me quick you guys show you guys stuff about events here, and I'll show my screen. Yeah, we got time. So let
Thank
me
you.
share my screen. Yeah, sure. Okay, so you can see my screen here, and here's the thing about triggers and events, guys. This is, we'll go to our trigger, and that's our let me kind of I wonder if I want to reset this. Let's go to this, and let me just kind of quickly delete these, and we'll just do a quick setup here. So we're going to start with a blank slate. I'm going to use 2 triggers. K1 is my 1 trigger, and let me close this, and I'll use K1 again. I'm going to use K1 again twice here as my FS2 trigger. FS2 is going to turn off the light, and go back, and FS1 again, we're using the same trigger, and this one I'm going to have turn on the light. Okay, now what is unaware of for a lot of people that don't quite get sometimes is that the icon here, you see how there's this sort of depicts like a circuit track. The train is moving in one direction, left to right, and this is what I call an arrival trigger. It's basically turning on the contact, and that's why you see sometimes when I read out coding, or at least references, so this is going to be contact 1, K1, and it's an arrival trigger. It's basically turning on that contact. So that's how I'm going to name that. If I go here to K2 or FS2, this is also being activated by K1. But this time, it's going to be K1 departure trigger. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So let me save that. So rather than being the off trigger, my position, it's basically going to activate that event when the train leaves that section or that contact track. This is why I like contact tracks, because if you think about a slider switch or a magnetic switch, it turns it on and off in milliseconds, right? Or how fast your train goes. But when you have a contact track, it can be on as long as the train is on that contact. And so now that I've got these 2 programmed, K1 is off right now. L1 is off. When the train hits contact, so did I get it reversed? Or did I, or am I still on the wrong article for that? Sorry. Oh, you know what it is, guys? Remember I changed the icons. So I have to reset my icon so it's correct. Hopefully. This is where sort of the realization comes that this is sort of software driven and not hardware driven. Let's see, did I still do that wrong? Edit. How frustrating is this?
Do you have the right? Excuse me. Do you have the right S88?
Yeah. Let me check that. Thanks. Edit article list. K1 direct.
Hey, you're good. Link S88 too.
Yeah. Controlling on, yeah, that should be working. Let's check my events again. K1A turns on 1. Okay, close. K1 departure. Actually, let's check. Oh, here's it. No power to the track. There you go. See how it is? That's an arrival. And then when the train leaves this track, it turns it off. So the point I'm trying to make here is the reason why I like contact track is I can program a different set of events whenever a train reaches a contact track and when it leaves that track, which is great for like yards or signal lights. Usually what it is like if I have a train where the engine is just passing the signal light, I will actually set the light to red, but I won't activate the brake module that is paired with it, because you don't always have to have the signal controlling that piece of track that stops it. So the other event is like if you have a turnout and I put a contact to the right of W2, for instance, I can use a departure trigger or a clearance trigger that tells the system that this turnout is now clear, and if I do want to switch it to go straight, it's not going to derail my train. So that's when we use arrival and departure triggers. So it's a two-state thing. When you have something like a reed switch or a slider switch, well, it's going to turn it on, but right away, because the slider is so short, it's going to turn itself off. You can't make good use of this function. So like K1, let's say it takes, 10 seconds for that train to clear that track. Well, this is always going to stay on. Once it goes off, then it turns off this L1 state. You see? So hopefully that answered your question or gave you some extra information there, Gary. So, all right. We can. Any other questions? We have about 4 minutes left, guys. If you have anything else that you'd like to ask. No, let's give me a moment to type in there. Do we have anything? Announcement worthy? Let's see. Nothing there. Nothing there. All right. Well, let's see. I think we can wind it down. Hopefully, you guys are all safe and, you're opened up to at least being able to eat outdoors somewhere. Any comments? Anything to announce, Rick?
Yeah, nothing going on.
All right. Well, once again, thank you guys for joining us. Our next. Oh wait. Will Marklin ever release a power supply with more than 5 amps for large scale?
We don't know.
Yeah. We don't really have any kind of insight into
Development.
their development.
Products.
As far as I know, I don't think Marklin has actually. Have they ever put out anything more than 5 amps?
No, but you don't really need it if you're running boosters. That's kind of the direction it seems like they've gone, rather than putting more power into the track, which could be damaging, splitting up the track and running boosters.
Yeah, I know some of the large gauge guys like to, especially in the States, they've run 10, 15 amps.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. It could be regulation from Germany or just that they don't see the need to it. We can't answer to that. So don't send us hostile emails.
They don't ask us what they want to make.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah. So yeah, definitely a good topic if you guys want to learn about brake modules and stuff like that. It's we have covered it a few times, but we're happy to do so again. We do have a comment that the 5 amp limit is perceived as a UL issue, as well as a European regulation. It's sort of like the same thing that they switched out transformers to switch mode power packs.
Probably.
So there's regulations that they deal with. And I like the switch mode power packs. I like that they're light and especially when you're traveling around with one, don't have to lug around a heavy transformer.
Which we have done several times.
Yep. All right. We are at our final minute. So we want to give you guys a farewell. Thank you for joining in, and hopefully you got answers you want. We got some nice compliments. People appreciate it, and we appreciate you visiting us and listening to us explain stuff. So with that being said,
we'll be back in a month.
Yes. And you guys take care, stay healthy, and we'll see you next month.